I have one thing, that I would like to put out there in public, that we are doing something. There is something, looked into for the situation that's going up on the school. It's not addressed by anybody. Everyone have a happy Thanksgiving.
You want to just go ahead and have Jim explain what we're doing, and why don't we do that? Why don't we respond?
Yeah.
Jim?
You're wanting to know what we do around the school?
Yeah, what is our program for school safety?
Every day that I have an officer available, they spend approximately an hour and a half around the school, working traffic, working on the individual intersections, in an attempt to make people stop.
Has anybody ever told you to not write a ticket?
No.
Has anybody ever told your officers not to write a ticket?
No, that's entirely up to the officers at the time that they choose to write a citation.
So why don't you suppose there's as many tickets as Mr. Jutnan wants?
Because the violations might not be as bad. I mean, they might be running it, but they're not running it as bad as Mr. Jutnan is stating.
So how does that evaluation take place? I mean, you have to see it, right?
Right, they have to see it. The officers have to see it. It's determined by the officer at the time when he's making the stop. So, it's the discretion of the officer. And take discretion away from an officer, yeah, it's not good.
So as part of their discretion, Grant, you work with Chief Schaefer, the officers, and the prosecuting attorney on a regular basis as to what's a valid ticket and what's not, whether it's a stop sign violation or a speeding violation. Can you kind of explain as to how you work with, how the officers come up with their evaluation of those tickets?
Sure. City manager, the way it works with the city, between myself, the police chief, and the prosecutor in Iron Mountain, I'm responsible for some of the civil infractions and traffic tickets, if you will. Some of those come to my office, we review them, and if it's committed in front of the police officer, they can write a ticket. If they don't see it though, then they have to bring it to me. And I have to look at the reports, I have to look at witness statements, I have to look at audio, video. The Norway PD does a nice job of putting everything on their cameras, so we're able to see what happens. And I have to determine whether or not I can meet the burdens required in a court hearing. If there's enough there to issue a ticket, we issue a ticket. If there's not enough there to issue a ticket, we don't issue a ticket. I haven't talked to Chief Schaefer or made any indication, of course, to not issue a ticket, because that's ludicrous, frankly. If there's something that is taking place that you observe or see, you should be issuing a ticket. But you also should not be issuing tickets frivolously or inappropriately. And so when there's civil infraction tickets, they come, if they're committed in front of the officer issues the citation. If it's not witnessed in front of the officer, that evidence comes to me, and then I make a determination whether or not you can meet the burden of proof. Most all misdemeanors, felonies that are committed in the city of Norway, those are handled by the police officers, and they're brought up to the Dickinson County prosecuting attorney, who handles the remainder of criminal charges and works with the Norway PD on, again, all felony charges, all misdemeanor charges over 1 year. I handle just a lot of the civil infractions and the traffic tickets. So much of this goes up to the prosecutor's office in Dickinson County, and our office handles some of the minor traffic offenses, if you will.
Chief Schaefer, do you have a letter from a private property owner, the school, on enforcing traffic on the school grounds?
Excuse me?
Do you have any letters or any kind of direction from the school on issuing tickets on the school grounds?
The school does not stop us from going onto their property to write citations. If we're able to, there's only certain citations you can write on private property. Reckless driving would be one, careless driving, things of that nature.
Moving violation.
But simple moving violations you cannot write on private property, and it's technically considered private property.
What about handicap zone?
Handicap zone we could write on private property.
Okay.
It would be considered a parking ticket, essentially.
So we get a call, we go up and investigate, and then we can write that ticket. Okay. Did you get a call on that?
I haven't gotten one. I don't know which you're exactly referring to.
Well, the one that came up. So
my officers may have gotten it and took care of it, handled it, talked with if they did, I don't know, did they have contact with you?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
obviously they did make
Yes,
contact.
I'll admit,
you know.
it was done.
Okay,
It was-
so
I just
they,
understand where your sign was.
okay, they must have given him a warning. I didn't see a ticket, so that's again up to discretion. of the
Again, has
officer.
anybody told you not to write tickets?
No, sir.
Okay.
It's probably contrary to the point. I'm probably the one that's written most of the citations up by the school, actually. So,
When it comes to the bus stop, we did quite a bit of research on the bus stops, locations.
yes.
We looked into every possible state ordinance dealing with traffic and, you know,
Yes, sir.
school zones and bus stops. What are the specific rules that we've located based on the MCL and the actual law?
Without it directly in front of me, I'm going to quote it, but basically the gist of it is the school and/or the transportation company has all the rights regarding that statute as a choice as to where they want to make a stop or can put a stop. I've talked to Lansing, there are traffic services down there, and I have no authority to tell them how to make their stop.
Did you ever tell them to not put on the lights or to put on the lights?
No, sir.
Or where to pick up?
No, sir.
When we
I
made-
asked them, though, to tell me what type of stop it is, because if it is a red light stop, I would have a cop car there.
And when we contacted them, what was the gist of our conversation? Remember?
I contacted them to ask them what type of stop it was going to be, and they said they were going to either make it a yellow light stop, a hazard stop, or in an alley.
Okay.
It was Casey McCormick is the individual I spoke with. He's the ISD bus superintendent, I guess you would call him. He's in charge of it.
So how many individuals did you talk to at the state police, MDOT, you know, different agencies?
It took a while. They don't actually have traffic services available at the MSP anymore. It's a traffic liaison officer. It took about 7 phone calls to actually find him at the state police.
Fair to say you made a number of calls
Yes, sir. I was on the phone.
for information.
Yes, for
Do you ever find anything in the statutes that deal with school zones?
No,
Official school zones?
no.
Come on, there's got to be, right?
25 miles an hour is the only thing I could find.
Grant?
I'm not aware.
Okay. I didn't either. We looked through the statutes. We couldn't find any designated school zones. I did put out information relative to the other managers in the state, asking them for their school zone procedures, and the information that I haven't received a lot of contact back, but that's something I pursue. Whether or not we can, you know, work with Mr. Carlson on whether or not we can actually have a designated school zone, but I'm not sure based on MCL whether that's going to be legal. We talked about maybe putting up some new stop signs with some LED to try and identify, you know, what, or identify the stop more clearly. If we get those in solar, they're $1,000 a piece. If we just get them hooked up electric, there's about $350 a piece. We do have to run the electric cable to the pole, so that'll be labor, whatnot. But probably, I know in looking at speed zone signs in the past with solar, that the batteries can be very expensive over time. So if that's something council would like us to look into further or to move forward with, it's something we should maybe consider. It just adds visual so people see it. Like Chief Schaefer said, we're up there on a regular basis.
Pretty much every day.
Again, there's no comments about not issuing or not being up there. In fact, we had a pretty strong conversation about we are going to be around that school. And I think that it's important for everybody to realize that. The other accusation that's being leveled is about the radar. Request was made to have a handheld radar. Again, we can't just go out to eBay and buy a $100 radar gun. There's some standards, right? What are the, Grant, what are the requirements that we're going to have in order to have an enforceable radar?
Well, there's only a certain number that are actually certified, and there's certain calibration requirements. Chief Schaefer can probably speak more as to exactly if there's a speeding violation that has to go through the calibration, the records, and it has to be a certified radar detector. I don't have a clue on the costs or what the access is, but I'm sure Chief Schaefer has an idea on if he's looked into that in the past, because frankly, I know, and Neil's made the comment, he doesn't think that we're taking it seriously, but I'm here to tell you that we are, and it's been discussed. And last time he was here, I reiterated that at your request, I looked into the unmanned traffic monitoring device, video cameras, if you will, just trying to brainstorm different ideas to get people to respect. And you know, Neil, and he's making reference and comments about people in the stop signs, and it's in a school area. And the citizens and students have to have our priorities for safety. And we looked into that, and under the Attorney General's opinion, that you can't have those in the state of Michigan. They're illegal as well.
So it's illegal to have...
You can't have, unmanned traffic control devices. I thought that you having the idea about the, maybe a stop sign that has the flashing light, a significant cost, but perhaps that'll bring a little more attention to the stop area if that continues to be a concern. But as far as the speeding and the handheld traffic radar, they're very strict requirements, and it's not an eBay purchase.
What about unmarked police car sitting up with radar? There's some entrapment rules, isn't there?
Well, it's one of the first things is going to be, are you in a marked patrol vehicle? You know, and identify yourself as a vehicle. We've seen some public press, and people unfortunately will sometimes take advantage of people in the public with unmarked vehicles, and sometimes are impersonating police officers. So, you know, this isn't I don't think Norway wants to have a situation of speed traps and people lying in wait. I think that the diligence needs to continue, making sure that our streets are safe and that people are enforcing the law and working on the speed. And as I told Mr. Jutin last time I was here, thank you for bringing this up and making it a priority. Though we sometimes don't maybe agree with all the incendiary comments, frankly, at the same time, the message is he's worried about the safety of the people in the community and the students, and that's not missed on anybody from what my conversations with the council.
And one other item is that Chief Schaefer and I have gone up to the school. We have sat and talked with the principal and with the superintendent, and you know, an option that we are going to talk about at the council is a school safety program that includes school crossing guards and liaison. School crossing guards under the MCL is a requirement. You need to put adults on the crossing. You can't put not putting students out there. But neither the school nor the city have the resources to just do that. And so suggestion we have is that if you want to pursue that, that's going to have to go out to referendum to not only the city, but both townships, Norway Township, Watsita Township. The cost to run that program for a crossing guard is roughly $10,000 to $15,000.
A base program would be about $11,000.
Right. And then for one officer, because basically we'd be hiring an additional officer, which is roughly $60,000 a year. So, you know, you're looking at about $80,000 to run that program, and the officer could be out in the parking lot, at the corners, during the in and outs, can be in the school working with the students and the administration during the day. And again, the crossing guards, you would need, there are 3 corners that we would have to deal with. You know, so we're looking at probably, what would we say, a couple hours a day?
On average, about 6 hours total, out of all
Yeah,
the
between
you figure 2 hours for every intersection, roughly.
So anyway, we put thought into it, but that is not something we can just do. That's something that we're going to need funding for. So that's something we can have an extended conversation about. So I wanted to make sure we dispelled any of the rhetoric that's out there, that we're not doing anything. We're not going to sit here and have a public argument. I don't think that does the issue, like Mr. Carlson said. It's an important and very important issue, and we take it very seriously, but having a public argument is going to do no one any good. Any personal issues, that's not going to help the safety issues. So we wanted to get that on record.
Thank you.